This is an honor being here today because I love broadcasting and I love the news business, sports business, information business, sales business, everything related to television and radio, and even in all the forms it's taken today. This is a special tribute luncheon for WPHL TV, or PHL 17, from those days on Mermaid Lane in Wynmoor to where they are now in the former A&P that's on Winfield Avenue in Winfield all this time. From Wee Willie Weber all the way up to the Mummers today, the WB Network and My Network TV and all the iterations that have happened over those years as you monitor the growth of America, really, and technology and how people's viewing habits change and what we can do for them. But there are some things that have remained the same. And one of those things is that PHL 17 has always been raw, real, relatable. It's always been understanding of people, and that's one of the things I love about the business, and I think you do too. We get to do exciting things and be in interesting places that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to do, and we have the responsibility of being able to bring those people together, and that's what television and radio can do. And for that, I think we all should be very proud, and I think it's another reason why we should be here celebrating every month or all the times that we can be this heritage of broadcasting in Philadelphia and the region. As Jerry alluded, I work at Cabrini University now for a little over 3.5 years. I'm Vice President of Institutional Advancement, and that school, Cabrini, is very much about access and opportunity and leadership and social change and justice in the right way. And I think that these things are part of what I've observed broadcasting to be about in all that time as well. And as I said, some things, though, still haven't changed. I love the way that in the early days, and you'll hear some of these stories, they were making it up. What television was becoming, they created. They were the foundation. But that recreation goes on all the time. And the realness of everything is real. So, you heard probably the old stories about, the set falling down on the Fanatic, or not on the Fanatic, well, kind of on the Fanatic, but more on Eggy. But, and just all the things that go wrong in live television. It still happens today. I know because I saw it this morning when Monica was at the weather and she didn't have her clicker with her and nobody could find the clicker. I mean, she's tap dancing up there. I think there was some kind of dance that was going on. There was all kinds of, she was reading from the phone book. Well, there aren't any phone books anymore, but she was, you found it. I think the best thing, but this is the raw part, right? So meteorologists have misplaced clickers before, but I haven't heard one say in a long, long time, I went to the bathroom and I think I left it in there. So this part of television is just awesome. It's just real, it's about people, and that's why I think when the Broadcast Pioneers tries to capture heritage and recognize people, it's very important. So to all the honorees that are coming in, and one of them is going to be speaking, we say congratulations. I would like to pause for just one moment, and just to recognize what you all probably know, that we lost Gene Crane last month. Gene Crane passed away. And Gene was, as I think every single human being will say, was the consummate professional. He was the best broadcaster in that sense. And he was great to work with, and he always had time for you. And he had time for this young radio and television reporter and broadcaster as well. So for Gene and his family and everyone, all his colleagues who worked with him, congratulations. I've worked with a number of people who are a little bit older than I am right now as I get older. And I look at Dory Lynn's out there, who is ageless at north of 90, right? 96? Wow, that's awesome, 96. Don Henderson looked like he was 96 50 years ago. I have no idea what was going on with. I used to work with Don. We used to be a kid like that. But Don is another great broadcaster, and he works well in Jersey and in Florida when the weather's good down there. And so for all of that, all of you still connected in many ways, thank you very much. PHL 17 is, as you can tell, is many things to many people over these years. In the industry, it was a UHF station, whatever that was, to a peer digital station today, a training ground, a proving ground, a mentoring ground, a creative ground. It was a movie station for many years. It was probably the sports station if you go through all the decades, with all the different, from the Big Five basketball and, of course, all the major sports that were out there. Harry Callis's first Phillies broadcast ever was on PHL 17, and so was his last. But PHL 17 was more than movies and sports, and it was more than a training, proving, and mentoring ground, although it still continues to be all those things. It is even more than that. I mean, it's a place that cares about the community, and that's been evidenced in the public affairs programming that Dory did, that still goes on with Jennifer. And, you know, I think that when you look at the Mummers Parade and Vince's embracing of that parade in Philadelphia and his being welcoming of everyone else that would like to be involved, I think that his leadership is amazing. And we'll talk more about Vince in just a few minutes, or maybe an hour or two. I don't know how long this is going to go with everybody's talk. And with that, I'd like to get to our first guest. So as we celebrate the heritage of PHL 17, while there was sort of a precursor version of 17 in the early 60s, PCA with Dr. Percy Crawford and the religious space, the official PHL, so that's how you get the 54 years, or if you read somewhere, 59 years. But when you look at what the PHL that is today and the people who got that new foundation going that led to that rapid growth in sports coverage and making it up as we go along and inventing television, you begin with one gentleman, and that's Mr. Len Stevens. And Len Stevens, one of the original owners, launched the station in 1965. And Len, I'd like to ask you to come up now. It all started when he won a contest, you know, just basically a voiceover or an announcing contest after he got back from Korea. And from there, he went into business. Now, he's been in the tower business for a long time, but it's his impact on PHL 17 that we ask you to talk about today and appreciate your involvement. Come on up, sir.
Where's Dory? Oh, good to see you again. I am honored to be here today. I don't have a good voice today, but I'll do the best I can. I'll try to avoid some of the historical stuff, which perhaps you've heard me talk about anecdotally in the past, and maybe some of the backstories that would be interesting to you. For example, oh, by the way, you are correct. Yesterday was the 54th birthday for Channel 17. That's always been a lucky number for me. I keep using it for codes and 17, 17, 1717. 17 is always in my life and probably always will be. Maybe you heard the story, but I'll repeat it because it's worth repeating. How did we get the name the call letters WPHL? We ran a contest among the advertisers, and a fellow from Atlantic Refining, that goes back a long time, doesn't it, won by submitting these letters, PHL, with the notion, and it's true, of course, that whenever you are in the world, and you buy a ticket for Philadelphia, your luggage tag will say PHL. It still does today, and it probably always will be. It's the way the station originally became anchored to the city of license. As far as that Bill Weber story, that's really true, except the fact that I was in a small elevator with him at 1619 Walnut Street, which was Westinghouse's headquarters at that time, and he had just gotten the news about his career there, and when you're standing next to Bill Weber in an elevator, you're looking up, and he did agree to do that, and it turned out that block of time from approximately 4 o'clock in the afternoon to 7 o'clock at night was Wee Willie Weber and a group of Japanese-made cartoons that we were able to buy cheap. But one of the things that we didn't buy cheap and had to pay a lot of money for was a rerun of Gilligan's Island. And that was stuck in the middle of Astro Boy, Eighth Man, and some other Japanese cartoon creations. That program had, I believe, 79 episodes to Gilligan's Island. That ran for 12 years. Every day. talk about wearing something out. It turns out that we never could wear that out because someone explained to me that kids are very comfortable when they see something that they can identify with, that they've seen before, and they know when this guy's going to get hit on the head with a club. They can see all that because they saw it before, and they're very comfortable with it, and they just become attached to it. And that was the reason why 79 episodes of Gilligan's Island ran for all those years. And Bill was the host of that. Another thing that you might wonder about is how we got the Phillies. Up until the time that they switched over to us, I think Channel 6 was running about 6 or 7 games per season. And the then owner, Bob Carpenter, was not happy with that. But what few people knew at the time was that the advertising agency that I then worked for, a company called Waitman Incorporated, was owned by 2 partners, Sid Tannenbaum and Babe Alexander. I guess these are not names anybody would remember. But Babe Alexander was the traveling secretary for the Phillies, and he convinced Bob Carpenter to allow Channel 17 to operate, to televise all of their games. And the rest, as they say, is history. We started it, and we actually, I went on the file and I found some old archives of, we were there when they were just putting the finishing touches on Veterans Stadium, which isn't even there anymore. So the station has gone through, is into its 2nd stadium now at that location. Moving right along, we moved from the studios up at Mermaid Lane in Wynmore, and we moved 3 times to 15th and Locust, 15th and Walnut, and then 16th and Walnut, and then it moved to Winfield, where it is now. We had very harrowing times of survival. We were undercapitalized. In fact, the purchase of the license from the Christian station that had it before was done with 20 people, 2 of whom were members of this organization, George Woods and Reggie Levong. Each of the 20 contributed $10,000, and that enabled us to get the seed money of $200, which is what it took to buy out the religious station. We then put the station back on the air, rebuilt it, bought new cameras, and within a year of going back on the air in September of '65, guess what happened? Color happened. And all the money that we had to raise to put that station on the air with black and white equipment became obsolete very quickly, as we too had to go into color. The other great thing that happened to us was that we were able to acquire some land, and after 1 year of zoning difficulties, get a permit to build the tower in Roxborough Antenna Farm. And that's what really put the station on the map and gave us a competitive signal with everybody else. We published this coverage story, which was a big fold-out, which actually compared the PHL signal at that new site, that new 1,000-foot tower in Roxborough, with each of the Philadelphia Channel 3, 6, and 10. That was our mission at the time, was to put an end to what we called three stationism, because that was all that people were able to watch at that time on VHF, Channel 3, 6, and 10. Channel 12 was on the air in Wilmington, and nobody could see them because their tower was insufficient and in the wrong place. We went through an awful lot of technical difficulties in those years, not just in the costly switch to color, but just everything was difficult. Just making payroll was difficult. I can recall, and this is a terrible way to live if you're in business, that on Thursday of a given week, many given weeks, we did not have payroll for Friday. Then all of a sudden, sales office door opens and Sam Feinberg or Don Heller our two top sales guys came into the office. It was kind of a bullpen. Everybody was in the same office, waiving a contract with our big advertisers at the time, Schmidt's Beer, Atlantic Refining, and my then partner, the late Aaron Katz, took it over to the bank and hypothecated it, and we'd have payroll for Friday. Now that was, as I say, a terrible way to live, where you didn't have payroll on Thursday for the next day. We did some pioneering things, including, as many of you know, we did the bandstand type show with Ed Hurst at Steel Pier with the diving horse. How many can remember the diving horse? Not many, I'm sure. And diving bell out there. Of course, we did, as was mentioned by Steve, we did the 76ers on a professional level. We did not do the Flyers. That one went to Channel 48. We did do Big Five, Penn, Temple, Villanova, St. Joe, and LaSalle from the Palestra. Those weekend games were a madhouse. Everybody remembers the Big Five on Channel 17. So I guess we did our share to shape and change the three-stationism, because we blasted into this town and got more viewers than people can remember. We also had the difficulty, and this is really hard for many to even think about, but when we went on the air in '65, we were on a thing called UHF, and that began with Channel 14, and people couldn't get Channel 17 or 29 or 48. And so the big problem at that time was to encourage the development of a UHF audience, which meant that television sets would have to be, of course, the FCC mandated that as of a certain date, all television sets would have to be what they called all channel. But it was a difficult situation, even though the sets were coming out of the box with that little circular or bow tie antenna. People didn't understand how to use them. They got discouraged when they couldn't get a clear picture of our station, and we had to fight that too, because any rating point that you got in those days was against the fact that so many of the homes didn't have the ability to get your station. Even though at times we felt that cable was an enemy, they were actually the great equalizer, because they put us on an even dial, if you will, with channels 3, 6, and 10. It was a hard road to hoe at that time, and we finally made it. I stayed with the station until the early 70s. I had a 5-year contract, then I stayed an extra year when we sold it, or we actually gave up control to a company called American Viscose, AVC, out of Wilmington. It was a closed-end investment trust who gave us $19 million to use Channel 17 as a template to build 4 other stations, which we did. They are KEMO, Channel 20 in San Francisco, WPGH, Channel 53 in Pittsburgh, WXIX, Channel 19 Cincinnati, and WATL, Channel 36 in Atlanta. We could not use Channel 17 down there because a guy named Ted Turner put his UHF station on the air on Channel 17, so we settled for Channel 36. I may have a minute or two for some questions, or anybody want to dig into the memory box? Okay then, thank you very much for this honor, and the best years for that station are yet to come. It's a light that will never go out.
Is this your iced tea? There you go. And I'm sure that there are questions, and if you want at the end, I'm sure the speakers are going to stick around and make sure that you continue that conversation. Color TV is a funny thing. I worked for a general manager once that said, color TV is a fad. I didn't say it was Vince. Is he working Yeah, no, I just made that up. Next up, we have Rick Fox, who's an early producer and director at 17, longtime camera person at NBC. Rick is soon to be inducted into the Broadcast Pioneers Hall of Fame. Congratulations to that, Rick. Come on up. One of your claims to fame, of course, is the legendary Dr. Shock Show on Channel 17. But Rick, had camera appearances, cameo appearances, and those things. And when I first saw that, and I did not know this until today, that while he worked at 17, he also was a drummer in a rock band at night. But if you go back and look at those videos, he looks like he stepped off the album, like a Doobie Brothers album. The long hair down to here and parted in the middle, skinny as could be. Which that hasn't changed. But Rick, come on up. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be here. Nice to be a broadcast pioneer, and I'm looking forward to November very much. As a 19-year-old about to graduate from business school, I figured I would work in a bank. My dad was a bank manager. And I figured I would also play the drums in a rock band every night, or at least on the weekends. And I figured that would be my life. It all changed one day when, about a week before graduating the business school, my dad told me he had seen in the paper that a relatively new UHF TV station, Channel 17, was looking to hire people for various positions. I like TV, and I called the station the next day, set up an interview with Jack Klein down at 1529 Walnut Street, and was hired a week later by operations manager George Finkel as a messenger at a hefty $80 a week. My first day on the job was June 16, 1970. I arrived at WPHL, 1230 East Mermaid Lane, Wynmoor, at 9 o'clock sharp in the morning. And I was immediately surprised that the super fantastic TV studio that I had conjured up in my mind somehow resembled an old warehouse. The front door opened to a small reception area, and to the right of that was a tiny lunchroom. The film department took up about half of the first floor. The other half was occupied by master control and the studio itself. A huge elephant door was on one side of the studio, which was great for bringing cars in and out. We did a lot of car commercial production there and other large items. And the studio was equipped in those days, 1970, with 2 color Norelco cameras with electronic zooms, which was the newest technology back then. The second floor of the building was home to all of the various departments and the offices. Program director Stan Marinoff had his office there. Jane Cohen was in charge of promoting movies and so forth. Engineering was handled by Russ Arts. Actually, Donald Leith, I think, was there first, and then Russ Arts. Harvey Klein directed traffic. The art department head was Neil Palulo, who was assisted by Jim Wilson. Barry McGarrick was our creative director. And the print shop finished off the floor plan with Harold Buzz Darden operating the old lithograph printing machine, which also had a side door that opened up to a tiny photo lab that was manned by Joe Macariello. The second floor also hosted the studio control room, which jutted out over the studio by a few feet. And with the windows, the control room provided a bird's eye view of the studio so you could see what was happening at all times. On that first day, George Finkel handed me a large leather valise and the keys to a brand new 1970 Chrysler station wagon. He informed me that I would be making 2 trips a day at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. from our studio in Wynmoor to our offices at 1529 Walnut and 1604 Walnut in Philly. The station wagon had 2 huge red and blue octagons, one on the driver door, one on the passenger door, with a big 17 in the middle, and a huge octagon on the hood, as I remember. And I do remember during my first mail run being on the Schuylkill Expressway with the AM radio blasting my rock and roll, and everyone staring at the car as I whizzed by. I burst out laughing because I was working in TV and being paid for it. I couldn't believe it. In 1970, the in-house production was pretty much at full throttle. Commercial productions kept the crew busy most every morning. And aside from commercial productions, Delaware Valley Forum with their own Dory Lens was being taped weekly. Dr. Shock's Scream-In was also taped weekly, and the studio had to turn everything around in the afternoon for Wee Willie Weber's Colorful Cartoon Club, which aired daily, I thought from 3 to 6 p.m. by the time I got there. And Len's right, was Astro Boy, Speed Racer, and who could forget Ultraman. Once a week, Bill had a live peanut gallery of kids to deal with, and Wee Willie was always a lot of fun to work with, and he was a true professional in every sense of the word. In 1970, our studio crew consisted of crew chief Billy Egbert, along with the broadcast pioneer Mike Muterick, Stan Welsh, Ron Bird, Joel Levitt, Charlie O'Gara, Charlie O'Neill. The film director was Bob Townsend. His 3 editors were Larry Robbins, Joe Campbell, and Brad Perch. Broadcast pioneer honoree Art Sikowski was normally at the switcher in master control. The TV directors at that moment were Fred Eisenthal, Richie Thal, and Freddie Bauer. Now, Fred had discovered Dr. Shock and was responsible for putting Scream-In on the air. And shortly at the end of 1970, to my recollection, Fred left the station, moved to New York, and he directed the Buddy Holly story in part with our station announcer, who was Robert Gittler, also known as Bob Gale from WIBG, and Bob Gittler wrote the screenplay for the Buddy Holly story. After Bob Gale left, 17, he was replaced by John Degman as our announcer. In 1970, I think it's fair to say that Channel 17 wasn't really regarded as a programming powerhouse. Our movie of the week was just that, the same movie shown every night at 9 o'clock. If you missed it Monday, you could catch it Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. It was just literally the same movie every night at 9. Early 1971 saw a lot of changes at the station, and on a personal note, I was then elevated to the print shop when Buzz Darden was added to the crew. I was now up to $90 a week, and I was living the dream. But the biggest change, of course, at 17 came with the acquisition of Phillies baseball. Philly now had a brand new stadium, the Vet, new announcers, Harry Callis, Richie Ashburn, and Bysam, and a new TV station to broadcast the Phillies' 160 games. With the acquisition of the Phillies broadcast, Channel 17 had to increase everything technically speaking. So 17's engineers modified an old Bluebird bus into a mobile unit, the Bluebird of Happiness, as it was referred to. It was equipped with 4 new cameras, tape machines, a new audio board, and eventually with a slow-mo disc operated by Dave Grimm, a video engineer. And the slow-mo could record 30 seconds of action on a highly polished disc. It only had 30 seconds and it would start recording over itself. So, of course, by today's standards, it's been far surpassed, but Dave Grimm worked miracles with that thing. By 71, George Finkel had left 17, and George resurfaced in my life when I was hired by NBC in 1984, years later. By then, George had been producing and directing football, basketball, baseball for NBC, including World Series and Super Bowls. George was replaced at PHL by station manager Harry Wiest. Harry came to us from WLOB TV in Portland, Maine, and he brought his engineering guru with him, Jim Corson. Every spare moment I had during my first year at 17, I spent hanging out and getting to know the crew. I was infatuated with the studio. And I was fascinated by the entire process, the cue cards, the lighting, and especially the camera work. I was absolutely hooked. So in early 1971, and with the acquisition of the Phillies, I had heard a rumor that Channel 17 had to add a few guys to the crew in order to accommodate the telecast. I brought this rumor up to Harry Wiest on a Wednesday afternoon. I said, it was probably January or February of 1971. And Harry confirmed the rumor was true, and I said, you know, Harry, someday I'd like to be a cameraman. And of course, my sights at that moment were set on 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road. And Harry said, oh, I didn't know you wanted to be a cameraman. Starting Monday, you're a cameraman. As I stand here. So the print shop duties were filled by Friday, and Monday morning I went to work in my new place of business, the studio. I joined IBEW Local 1241 and began honing my skills as a camera operator by placing plastic ivory liquid bottles on stools. And as I dialed in and out, rack focus and truck left to right and back again, I couldn't believe I was actually doing camera. And before I knew it, I was zooming in on Bill Weber's 6'5" frame and trying to frame him properly and keep focus. And I was televising the diabolical Dr. Shock getting out of his coffin. Billy Egbert was my mentor back then, and most every skill he passed on to me, I still use to this day. Before I knew it, I was out in center field at the vet, trying to hold the camera steady. Every time a Philly would hit a home run, baseball director Steve Silverman seemed to have a knack for cutting to my camera on the batter just as he was rounding second base. That was great, except that was the exact moment that the cannon would go off when Philadelphia Phillies would drop, and the huge flag would drop down right under my booth, shaking the entire camera like an earthquake. Steve took that real well. If I wasn't doing camera for any given game, I was placed in the booth as the assistant director with Harry Ritchie and By Some. And those are some of my most treasured memories. My days in the TV booth with the best in the business. Harry Ritchie, By, and a little later, Andy Musser. Those were the days. Year after year, as baseball season came to a close, I was laid off from the crew, but brought back to the station, either in the print shop or the film department, as the shipper. I've always thanked my bosses for doing that because it kept me employed and it kept me in the business. Also during the early 70s, we aired the Phillies pre- and post-game show from our studio with Big Al Meltzer. The post-game show was called the 10th inning, which became interesting if the game went into extra innings. Sometimes we'd end the game at the 14th inning, and he'd say, "Welcome to the 15th inning." So, Dory Lenz, once again, was host of Baseball for the Better Half, which show was showcased all the players' wives. It was always interesting. And in the early 70s, Dr. Shock's Screamin' was moved from Saturday nights to Saturday afternoons by our new station manager, Ted Bays. And Mad Theater and Horror Theater aired back-to-back from 2 to 5 p.m. each Saturday afternoon. Also in the 70s, Channel 17 was host to Big Five basketball, and many nights found us sharing the crow's nest at the Palestra with Al Meltzer and Charlie Swift. Now, our new station manager, Ted Bays, was a Midwesterner, and he had a very dry sense of humor. On one cold, wintry day, I found myself back in the print shop, and with nothing to do at that moment, I wandered into the control room. Joel Levitt had now become a director, and he had a new toy to play with in the control room. It was called a Chiron. I asked Joel, I said, "What does that do?" And he explained how you type the words on a keypad, and the typed words and letters punched holes into the video and filled those holes with white so that whatever you typed now appeared magically on the screen. Well, now this meant that one camera no longer had to be tied up shooting a black and white art card so that the words could be superimposed over the video. It was a stroke of technological genius. Joel then left the control room and urged me to try it. He said, "Here, try it out, have some fun with it." A couple of minutes later, as I was typing away, Ted Bays walked in, our station manager, and excitedly I said, "Hey Ted, look at this. Whatever you type now gets superimposed over the video." Ted said, "Hey, that's great. Can I try that?" I said, "Yeah, sure, try it." So Ted leaned down and he started typing, "Why doesn't somebody do some work around here?" And I said, see how easy it is? And I went, "Oh, I guess I should get back to work." He goes, "Yeah, good idea." 75 was, of course, another banner year for 17. When the station moved to 50th and Winfield, where it remains to this day, of course. Now, the interesting thing is, for the first time in its history, WPHL incorporated everything under one roof. Accounting, sales, traffic, the studio, every department now had the ability to interact with each other instantly. From 67 until 75, the accounting offices were located at 1604 Walnut, and the sales and corporate offices were across the street at 1529 Walnut. So to now have the entire operation physically under one roof was truly a blessing and a very welcome change. In April of '78, on-air promotion manager Franco Buena decided to leave 17 to sharpen his writing skills, and he suggested to Ted Bays that I fill his shoes. When offered that position, I jumped at it and enjoyed being the on-air promotion manager for the next 5 years until my departure in August of '82. By 1978, Henry Briggs was our production manager, a spot which was later filled by Joel Levitt upon Henry's departure to operate his new company, Video East. Sid Doherty was our station announcer. Hal Pontius loved Sid. Sid was the best. I can't tell you the two stories. And Sid was the best. Hal Pontius was now our film director. Walt Bundy was in charge of engineering. And one of my interns from Temple University was a young guy named George Cummings, who later carved his fortunes over at Channel 29. By the late 70s, 17 had become the great entertainer under the auspices of our newly hired promotion director, Jeff Sohinki. Broadcast pioneer legend Gene McCurdy was our president, and program director Zvi Shubin came aboard. Sadly, in September of 1979, we lost Joseph Wislak, Dr. Shock, as he suddenly passed away due to a heart attack at age 42. He's been gone almost 40 years to the day, and I still miss him greatly. 1980 saw the origination of Dancing on Air, thanks to Mike Nice, and was directed by one of the first female directors in our industry, Kathy Youngman, who shared the directing responsibilities with a new kid from Rockford, Illinois, named Dave Abramson. Kathy's now and has been with Cabrini College for many years, but I have no idea whatever happened to Dave. He's probably directing infomercials for HSN. I don't know. In 1982, I married Jeannie Linden, who's at the table, who also worked at 17 in the accounting department. She's with me today, as she has been for the past 37 and a half years of marriage. Along with my two sons, Ryan and Christopher, my family has supported me every step of the way, and I thank them for their love and their support. I departed PHL in August of '82 and reinvented myself as a cameraman once more. In February of 1984, I was hired by NBC Network in New York as a cameraman and enjoyed 32 years there on staff. I still do camera for NBC Golf and Late Night with Seth Meyers on occasion, even though I officially retired from NBC in 2015. I would tell you about my 35 years at NBC, but that would take another 6 minutes. I have a quick story on Bill Weber. We were doing the Wee Willie Weber Cartoon Club one day, and I think it was once a month he would have Richie Cooper from the Philadelphia Zoo come over to the studio and bring some kind of an exotic animal. He would bring an owl one week, and then the next month he would bring a small cat or whatever. And this particular day, he brought a 3-foot boa constrictor. So Richie was a great guy, and we'd gotten to know him over the years. And Bill had a habit of being live from 3 till about 5 o'clock every day. But when the videotape came into being, the 17, it was accessible. Bill had the idea, let's tape the last 3 segments, 5:15, 5:30, 5:45, the last 4 segments of the show, so I can get home and have dinner with Connie and the kids. We all thought that was a great idea, and we did that for many, many shows. So one day, Richie Cooper brings in this boa, and we say, okay, Bill, we're ready to tape the first segment. Okay, roll the tape. And of course, they had the 10-second roll, 10, 9, 8, all the way to, So they cue him, and he says, well, welcome back. With me today is Richie Cooper from the... Cut! Bill says, what's the problem, Joel? Joel was directing. He says, Bill, I'm sorry, but the tape had a head clog. We have to do it again. He says, okay. So they start up again. He says, all right, okay. Bill says, all right, welcome back to the show, and with me today is Richie Cooper. Richie, what'd you bring today? Well, I brought a boa constrictor. And, what's it eat? Oh, it eats 1 mouse a month, and right now it's 3 feet long, but it'll turn out to be about 6 feet. Cut! Bill's like, what's the matter, Joel? He said, audio, the mic stopped, crapped out. All right, fix the mic. So they fix the mic. Do it again, Bill. Okay. They cue him. He goes, welcome back to the show. With me today is Richie Cooper from the Philadelphia Zoo. What'd you bring today, Richie? Well, Bill, I brought a boa constrictor. He's 3 feet long. And what's he eat? Well, he eats 1 mouse a day or a week, and he'll grow to be about 6 feet long. And he's found in the jungles of the Amazon, and they're very, very cut. Now Bill's just about had it. He says, what's now? He says, another tape clog. I'm sorry, Bill. I'm so sorry. We'll have to do it again. It's okay. So now they cue him for about the 4th time or 5th time. Bill says, welcome back. With me today is Richie Cooper from the Philadelphia Zoo. What'd you bring today, Billy? Richie, what'd you bring, a boa? He says, yeah, I brought a boa constrictor. It looks to be about 3 feet long. I understand they grow to be about 6 feet. He goes, yeah. He says, now that boa probably eats like 1 mouse a month. He goes, yeah, that's just, he's found in the Amazon, right? Richie says, yeah. And he says, thanks a lot. We'll be back after Rocket Robin. And Richie looked over at me like, what the hell happened? What was that? You know, it was like the Bob and Ray routine with the Komodo dragon. You know. I left 17 over 37 years ago. I'm reminded every day of the people, the friendships, the laughter, and the experiences I enjoyed while I worked there. They were the best years of my life. I never forget them. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Rick. And I'm glad you mentioned in that long list, because it was very obvious that it has had an impact on you and all the individuals that you work with and your descriptions of how talented they were. And you also mentioned account executives, which I made one oblique reference to. I do want, those of you who are in broadcasting probably know this, but those of you that may be watching online, never get in the car with an account executive, no matter what you do. They don't know the speed limit. They either drive at 15 miles an hour, which is rare, but we have one over there that kind of does that. And then I learned a lot of this through different stations, but 17, I really learned it. And then the rest of them, well, let's put it this way. If you are late for an appointment, get into a car with an account executive. But if you kind of don't want to be at Pocono Raceway or something like that, then it's their job. They have to do business. And that part of the business of account executives is one that unfortunately gets very much overlooked. So thank you guys and gals for all you do. We have a number of people. We kind of looked at Lynn helped launch us into those foundational days and how difficult it was to actually roll the boulder up the hill to get that station established, and a very good description. And with Rick, you started seeing that passion and how it all played together over the 1970s. And we're not exactly going to go entirely chronologically, but we are about at that point. Dave, why don't you come up now? Dave Abramson is a longtime chief engineer for the Philadelphia Phillies, formerly a director at PHL 17, among many things. He, for example, is, along with Bill Giles, the father of Fanavision. I don't know exactly how that gets created, that baby, but he's things that we take for granted that we go, wow, you did that? And so there's that and so much more that's involved with Dave. And just share a little bit of your time with us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for remembering me for this occasion here. It was fall of 1979, and I'm sitting at my station, WCEE-TV, out in Rockford, Illinois. I'm a staff director and kind of the production manager at the same time. And a friend of mine, Bob Clark, over at Channel 29 calls and says, hey, there's a job opening at Channel 17. And I said, aren't there other directors, within like 100 miles? They've got to go 800 miles to get one. I applied. I missed my flight to Philadelphia the day I was supposed to fly there. I finally got a flight 4 hours later. So made a very late entrance for my interview. Got the job. Thank you. January of 1980. I'm in the studio at Channel 17, and I was brought in as a director just to do commercials, shows, whatever. I didn't do programming. We lived kind of our own world back there in the studio, just inventing as we went. And the cast of characters that came through there, besides the ones, Eggy, Artie, Charlie, and Rick, and so on, through the building, an astoundingly creative bunch of people that just said, all right, How do we do this? Nobody ever said we can't do this. It's how do we do this? We'll figure it out. And we were in competition with a company called E.J. Stewart down south of the airport. They were the other production company in town. And they actually, in the long run, they probably got the better accounts over the years. But boy, did we have fun doing stuff. And the people I got to work with, you know, the ad agencies that came in, you know, the Waitmans, Barney Kramer. There's a name from my past. I'll get to Barney in a minute. Irv Silver, you know, just all these agencies that came through. There was a creative director over at Wanamaker's. His name was Jim Spark. He had more creativity in his left hand than the rest of us put together. He just did the most beautiful commercials for Wanamaker's department store. And the cast of characters I met, you mentioned Gene Crane. I got to direct Gene's Acme grocery store commercials for years. All these people that came into the station, including John Facenda. I got to direct John's last insurance commercial for Colonial Penn, and it was Barney Kramer's client. So we come in one morning, we're gonna do the commercial. John comes in, he's not looking good. Makeup has to scurry around to try and get him fixed up. They get him fixed up. It gets to be lunchtime, and Barney and the management at the station, they're gonna go off to the San Marco, the legendary San Marco, which I think should be nominated in the, not with us anymore category for the pioneers, but just put the San Marco in the Hall of Fame. But John demurred. He said, no, I think I'll stay here and get a hoagie. Okay. I'm looking around, I said, wait a minute, do I stay here with John? Or do I go for the 2-hour lunch over at the San Marco? He said, no, this guy's history, I'm getting a chance to work with him. I'll stay here with John. We'll be in the studio, we'll be fine, you go ahead. So, John, what would you like? Oh, a tuna fish hoagie. So I run across the street to the old Athens Deli pizza place, bring back a couple of hoagies, and I pull up a table. John's still standing there. I said, here, come on over, John, sit down. Here's the food's yours. David, I would prefer to stand. Oh, you okay, John? David, I have hemorrhoids. I could not tolerate that sitting for 2 hours with the tuna hoagie will be fine. We spent about an hour and a half just John telling me his stories from his time all through, starting in radio. And something I never knew, he told me, I said, where'd you get the voice? He said, I trained myself to do that. I said, when I started in radio, I didn't sound anything like this, but I trained myself. It worked. The other big thing that came along was dancing on air, in my case. But as a little tune-up for that, it was before the show was thought up. I was assigned a show, along with Linda McLaughlin, our assistant production manager, at a church show. Black gospel church show from the Deliverance Evangelistic Church up on North Broad Street. And it was Pastor Benjamin Smith, and he would do his little sermons and intros, and we had the Simpson family singers would come in, Mom and Pop Simpson, and they're legendary up North Philadelphia up that way in the gospel community. And there were a whole lot of Simpsons. There were a bunch of Simpsons. But I was assigned a show, and Linda and I took a look at it. We went up. We were invited up for church one Sunday morning so that, everybody could meet us. Just a wonderful time up there. And we buffed up the show. We gave them a new set, and we decided to record the music on separate nights. So the Simpson family would come in, and, we'd have a big baby grand piano there, and they would sing the music tracks or whatever. I didn't know music from a hole in the ground. I could tune in music on my radio, and that was about the extent of my knowledge of music. And one Joy Simpson, a Juilliard-trained, aspiring opera singer, pretty much the lead singer in the family there, took me and taught me music, Bars, beats, measures, everything. She taught me the music, and I'll be forever grateful to Joy Simpson for that. So when I got Dancing on Air, it was Kathy and I splitting the directing duties. Kathy had never really done any live directing to speak of. She was pretty much studio, and when I was out in Illinois, I was directing news, weather, and sports, kids shows, sport, whatever. So, live directing, oh yeah, okay, another show, let's go. Cue, you're on, play the music. It was so easy to roll into any music number. I could just sit there and listen to the music, and I get it. Ready, one, take two, that kind of stuff. It was just a fun time doing that show. Mike put up with me till summer of '83 when I finally left the station. But one day along in there in '82, I got a call from Denny Lehman at the Phillies, who I had been directing their ticket commercials, and the station would send me down to the ballpark every night they were in town to help coordinate the broadcast down there for the visiting club. Denny said, "Hey, can you help us with something?" I said, "Bill Giles wants to buy one of those big instant replay screens." At the time, only the Mets and the Dodgers had one. I said, "Yeah, sure, I can do that." Little did I realize I was going to make a hard left turn in my life. I thought I was in TV forever. We went to Japan. We picked one out. The Panasonic company toured us around. They were putting the full course press on Bill to write a check while he was there, and Bill was not about to do that. He had more negotiating to do. We get up on the third morning, I think it was, fourth morning. Bill had left messages for Denny and myself. He got on a plane and went home. He just didn't like being pressured anymore, so he left us in Japan. We flew home the next day. But that experience turned into helping them build it. It allowed me to start my own little production company with the Phillies as my first client, and then just go on and on. I had a production company for 20 years, taking care of a lot of corporate accounts around town, directing down at the old vet, and then the Phillies built the new ballpark. And they brought me in as chief engineer at that point because they knew they needed something. And I just next week will be 50 years in broadcasting. 50 years from Rockford, Illinois to now. And I've decided that, okay, I've done my time, served my sentence. I'm retiring from the Phillies at the end of August, or October rather, and just gonna have more time to have fun. But just a phone call that says, hey, there's an opening at Channel 17, 40 years ago to now. What a long, strange trip it's been, but boy, have I had fun. Thank you so much.
All right, I have an announcement to make, and this is one that throw everything at me for this. No one said anything. It's obviously been great what's been said, and very heartfelt, and we can never spend enough time with any individual in this room. However, when my own detection is that if we keep at the same pace, Dave will be retired before we're finished with this lunch. So I will ask that the next speakers, I know that you were given a time frame, at least that's what I was told, and it was a fairly reasonably short one. If you could indulge us so that some of the folks get back to work and do some other things, because I'm sure need to do so. With that in mind and with your appreciation, I'd like to continue with the theme that Dave said, which is about dancing. And we have a couple of folks that are very much connected to that, although they do many, many things in their lives and in their broadcasting careers. One of the great individuals who, at least phonetically, his last name is an apt description of who he is. Will you please welcome Michael Nice, producer of Dancing on Air in the 1980s, Dance Party, and scores of other things. Michael, let's see, I give you, 30 seconds? No, but...
That's about it.
That's about it. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. Goodbye. Now. Actually, there's a table over there. that I tried out one of the stories, and they greeted it very nicely. And so, thanks to them, I'm going to tell it to you. There's two quick stories. One is about Stevie Wonder. And Stevie, no, you're not Stevie Wonder. Why did I give you this? All right. So Stevie told us 3 months in advance that he would be on the show. And we promoted it every day by hours, by minutes, by seconds. And the day of the show, I got a call from his PR agent who said, Stevie can't make it, he's not feeling well. I said, after all we promoted it, we're all going to look foolish. So he said, well, Stevie is over with his blood brothers at Overbrook High School, and maybe you can talk one of the brothers to bring him over. So on the way over, I remembered somebody told me that Stevie was a foster child in Philadelphia with a Mrs. Williams. And that was in the back of my mind. So I finally got up to Overbrook High School. I found one of the brothers, and I said, I'm Mike Nice from Dancing on Air, and he paid me no mind. It was like this, and I know how to read, body language. So I said, a lot of people are going to be disappointed that Stevie won't be on the show today. Same look. Now, I'm a very honest person. That's what my mother taught me to be. However, I had to lie like a rug to make things happen. So I said to his brother again, I said, oh, by the way, Mrs. Williams sends her regards. Now, you got to know, I don't even know who Mrs. Williams was, okay? So he said, when did she send her regards? I said, oh, last Thursday when we had dinner. We didn't have dinner, This is what Dick Clark, I'm sure, had to go through. So he says, that's kind of funny. I said, why? He said, because she died 10 years ago. Well, you can imagine, there was a second of silence, and we both started laughing. And he brought Stevie over, so I got him to come. So if I say to you, which I have said to the table over there of Channel 17 employees, I use the phrase, she died 10 years ago, and they'll start laughing, and you'll know why.
And what did Stevie Wonder say to you?
What did
What did he say to you? The one time, I think not in that time.
what, remind me?
Looking good?
Oh, yeah, when Stevie met me, the first thing he said to me was, hey, Mike Nice, you're looking good today. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I needed that. So that's one of the stories. You think that Dick Clark had it easy, right? But you never know. But the other story was, I forgot. They're applauding it. Thank you very much. Oh my goodness. Yes, thanks. I had the opportunity of telling Madonna to clean up a bathroom, and she did. As I said to her, that her dance partner, Erica Bell, wrote on the bathroom wall, Channel 17, Tinkerbell. So I had to tell Madonna that, and this was her first TV appearance, by the way, but I had to tell her that, you won't go on the air unless you clean up the bathroom. And so she did, which I understand she's so proud of it even today, that she did do that. But, working at Channel 17 was a real blast. Zvi Shubin and the general manager, the president, and so forth, everybody was like family. And that, I'm sure everybody can relate that to. You're shaking your head, yes. Yeah, it really was. And that was great. And did I ever think that as a former teacher, I would be roped into doing a dance show with 175 kids a day? What's that? You loved it. I did love it. Yeah, what can I tell you? It was really great stuff. But I've met so many wonderful people, you know, there and since then. Some of them are sitting at tables right where I'm looking at now. Jim Murray, who's a former general manager of the Eagles. You can't find a finer guy. And Steve, wonderful. And Jackie, who is with their group. I've known Jackie since elementary school, but she's older than I am. By 3 months. But I just wanted I wish I could shake the hand of everybody here that you added to the station, you added to the lives of people, and I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity for doing that. And Jerry, you've done a great job with Broadcast Pioneers, and I want to acknowledge you publicly. And the other one is my hero, Pat. I'm going to start a fan club for him. Are you ready? Yeah, thumbs up. Okay. But again, thank you all for giving me an experience it was worth a lifetime. And I did it for my parents because they were getting older, and it was important for me to give them a life after 80 and 90. So thank you all, and thanks for making my life great too.
I don't know, if you're a real broadcaster, you don't do it for your parents. Most of us have wonderful parents, but not that wonderful. My mom still says, now you are still going to law school, right? It's true, almost true. Next up is continuing on that theme, and as I said, it's not entirely all chronological. The next gentleman, Ron Joseph, RJ, has so many different stations that he's touched and ways that he's touched the nation in broadcasting. But we'd like to talk a little bit about your experiences with PHL 17. RJ, why don't you come up, please?
Thank you, Steve, and thank you. I'm going to speak loud for those of you who could not hear other people that spoke today. I would be really irresponsible if I did not thank the man who started me in broadcasting as a 7-year-old kid. His name was Phil Sheridan. He had a show on WFIL, Rise and Shine. He brought me over to Channel 10, and we did a wonderful show called, it was a kids show, and it was entitled Radio Rangers. And then from there, I was very lucky to get a spot with the Ghostwriter on Channel 10. Radio Rangers was on 1210 WCAU. Then they brought me over from the Ghostwriter show to Action in the Afternoon. It was a show that was done live, if it was rain, sleet, or snow, behind the Channel 10 building. We would do the show live. It was a cowboy show, a facade that was built behind the Channel 10 building that is empty today. We don't know if they're going to throw it down. I know it's under contract to be sold, or they're going to put a skyscraper there. Anyway, to make a long story short, God bless Phil Sheridan. There's other people that have helped me. Dick Clark gets all my, publicity, but there were other people before Dick Clark. Phil Sheridan was one, and then, of course, Tony Mammarella, who brought me to Dick Clark and ABC TV at 46th and Market. But the guy that brought me to Channel 17 was Harry Harris. He wrote an article in the Inquirer. He had a television column, if you remember the great Harry Harris in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and telling this little young kid, there's going to be a station opening up. Ronnie, why don't you go up to 1230 Mermaid Lane? First of all, I didn't even know where Mermaid Lane was. And he gave me directions, and he said, go up there and see Dr. Crawford. I was friends with John Facenda, and he told me not to go. John was a wonderful friend, a mentor, and I even love him till this day. We put up a wonderful sign at Monument Avenue, which still stands across from WCAU, John Facenda Way. And his son thanked me for putting it up about 9 years ago. It got thrown down, and I got the city fathers of Montgomery County to put it back up. It still stands there at Monument Avenue and City Line. God bless John Facenda. I ate dinner with him. Let's hear it. The funny thing about broadcasting, while we were putting the sign up, young people were coming out that worked at Channel 10. They didn't even know who John Facenda was. That's how it goes to show you an icon can be forgotten. And you here all remember the great John Facenda. He did commercials for Lucille Ball. He smoked cigarettes. It was Philip Morris. He did the commercial, national commercial. He was the voice of the NFL. This man was a true icon of Philadelphia. How could he ever be forgotten? And as long as the sign is there at Monument Avenue, thanks to the wonderful people at Lower Merion allowing me to put the sign up. God bless John Facenda. There were so many other people. Harry Harris brought me to Channel 17. Now, here was a station that, to get on television, we didn't have YouTube like some kids have today to do a show and become a star. They have 5 million hits, you know. We didn't know how to get on television. So when a new station was opening up, this was my opportunity of a lifetime to do a show. And they wouldn't take a dance show because they were religious. Dr. Percy B. Crawford, A Wonderful Family, which Lenny Stevens got the station for $200,000 because they sold it for next to nothing. It was a wonderful little station that we start doing things. I would run camera, I would do my own show, I would direct in the control room. They allowed me to do everything. I was young, but it was no union, and there was nobody to complain. The station was wonderful. But in 60 to 62, it had no viewers. So we had to go out and hustle UHF adapters, which you're looking at me. Well, these are like the digital stuff today you have. They got you the two new channels, 35 and 17. We didn't make a fortune out of it. We just got more listeners. Also, my show was rebroadcast on 1,000 water in Chester, Pennsylvania, because my show was called Spotlight on America, where we talked about young people's careers. And I've had stars there that promoted the time slot because nobody knew what Channel 17 was. I had High Lit, Joe Niagara on the show, and of course, Dick Clark. They promoted me on this little unknown station that became a giant, and it's an icon today. As you know, Channel 17 is a big, big part of the Philadelphia community and still will remain forever. To make a real long story short, where would I have been without Channel 17? You know where I would have been? Nowhere. There was no YouTubes. There was no way to produce shows. Thank you. It doesn't matter. I'll get it. Channel 17 allowed me to produce my own shows, get my own sponsors, and schlep the 2-inch tapes across the USA. In the plane, in my car, I was on 20 stations at one time, all major markets that carried a dance show, which I really wanted to do. As you read in my biography or YouTube, you'll see that I was the only kid from that crazy dance show, American Bandstand, that got a show of his own like Dick Clark. So I was very, very fortunate because of Channel 17, the first UHF commercial station in the city of Philadelphia. Of course, there was 35, but it was owned by, you know, the city schools, and they just had instructional programming. We were a real station. and it was commercially. We had no budget whatsoever. Bubblegum, I think that was our big thing, was bubblegum. And soda, Ma's Root Beer, my first sponsor. Byerly's Beverages, all these big, big sponsors. But we had a wonderful time. It taught me the business. It was my Temple University. It was my Villanova. It was wonderful. Channel 17 taught me how to sell to other UHF stations that were coming on in different markets across the country. I have a wonderful booklet that captures some of the moments of our TV show that was syndicated by myself. And of course, here at Broadcast Pioneers, we did it before, and we have some nice things. There's the coverage map of the original Channel 17. No one has that, but that was at 1230 Mermaid Lane in Chestnut Hill. To get young people up there, we had to go in a carcade. To get guests, they would meet me at the Marriott, believe it or not, and follow my car up to 1230 Mermaid Lane. You had wide turn, Wissahickon Drive. We'd lose half the people coming up. And it was live television. If we all didn't arrive at the same time, there was no show. Well, not everybody's here yet. We'll be getting underway. But anyway, it was a joy. Channel 17 was not a education. It was a learning ground for a young kid that loved television, and I still love it today. And even though I'm on reruns around the country on YouTube and some old stations that are running me in San Francisco and in Hollywood, I'm grateful for WPCA. That was our call letter, the Percy Crawford Association, owned by the Young People's Church of the Year. As I alluded to, John Facenda gave me advice not to go there because he said, "You're Catholic, they're not going to take you, Ron." I said, "John, I know you are a devout Catholic." I used to go to church with him at St. Bernadette's in Drexel Hill every Sunday, and he'd raise hell with me. "When are you going to go on a regular station?" I said, "When you get me on a regular station." But anyway, I love Channel 17. No matter what, that was one time I did not take John Facenda's advice. That man, a voice of God. I always spoke of him like that platitude. Thank you for listening to me. I hope I did not bore you. But everything I said, I could not make up, and I'd swear on a stack of Bibles, it happened just the way I said. And when you're telling the truth, I once told that to my dear wife's mother. She says, you don't have to always tell the truth. Dick Clark said I was too honest to a fault. Well, I'd rather be honest to a fault. Thank you again for listening.
So as you can see, those of us still working in the business, are standing on the shoulders of others. And so we appreciate what everyone has done. We have really only one more speaker left and then a closing recap. And that other speaker is, we're pioneers here, right? Well, this one deserves that title as much, if not more, than anybody else. Because she's a double pioneer in a way. So it's one thing to be in the formative stages of any industry or have served in it for a long period of time, but it's another thing to be in a male-dominated industry in the early years and be a woman that cracked into that and succeeded in it despite whatever prejudices existed at the time, and setting a role model example for others. And that's just the beginning of the Dory Lynn story. Dory, will you please come up and just say a few words? I would appreciate it, or we'll bring the microphone over to you, or whichever's easier for you.
It's late and I won't be too long. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay. No, that's what happens when you get older, sometimes. I was very, very lucky. A lot of things were working in my favor. It may not seem that way, but it was. How I came to Channel 17 in 1970. I was working with Alan Scott as a co-host of the Stock Market Show on Channel 29. Bill Fox owned it. And I must tell you, I was terribly nervous about speaking today. I don't know, I have done hundreds and hundreds of presentations in my years, and for some reason, I was terribly, terribly upset and nervous. It was just revisiting the past, listening to all these stories, and it just threw me, and it has seemed to be throwing me. All right, in any case, we had 3-hour show for 2.5 years, stock market show, very interesting. And then we came in one morning to go to work, no cameras, no cameramen, nobody there. It was empty, a studio. It was empty. What happened? Bill Fox sold the station to Taft Broadcasting, who was going to come in and put a new show in, dialing for dollars. Nobody told us, nobody said a word. That's showbiz. Kindly, thoughtful. There you go. It ain't. If there are any kids in the room, it's not easy. In any case, what were we going to do? I made an appointment at Channel 17 and everywhere else. No luck. But I was waiting there in the waiting room, and the secretary said, you know, they're looking for somebody who's interested in community events, community something. She was very vague because she didn't seem to know, but that was it. That was it. That's all I needed. I had been, before I came to Taft and Bill Fox, I had been a stay-at-home wife and mother. Then my husband died. And then a few years later, she was growing up, and I needed another life in any case, and that's how it happened. Somebody suggested a new station was opening up. But in any case, times were changing. This was 1970, and the Federal Communications Commission was changing a lot of things. They were making it really, really tough for us to ignore the problems and concerns of people in the tri-state. We had to do special programming. We had to go out into the community and find out what they wanted, speak to them, and submit these things to the file. The public files had to be looked at, and everybody had very fancy lawyers. Let me tell you, this was serious stuff. You could get into true trouble, even lose your license if you didn't pay attention to these things. And one more very important thing, women must not be discriminated against. They must be hired, they must be listened to. This was a very, very early Me Too. All right. I made the appointment at 17, spoke to the secretary. He was sick, he had the measles. But when he came back, I had an interview. And I had, incidentally, I must tell you, I had been very active as a non-broadcaster in the community. I had been on the board of several agencies, Salvation Army, there were several. How could you not hire me? How could you possibly not hire a person who had on-air experience and who had been active in the community? Of course, there it was. Well, I started work. I didn't know a thing. What do you do? What do you do? How do you plan a programming? I had not done that. We had discussed things on air, Alan and I, but this was all new to me. They didn't know what to do. This was new to them. And all of a sudden, the second day, and this is the truth, the God honest truth, The second day, who walks in? This handsome young man, Joe Chiappa. I'll never forget him. He was on the staff of the Greater Philadelphia something for the prevention of venereal disease. True story. That was it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to pay attention to venereal disease, which it was syphilis, actually. Now, don't forget, in those days, nobody had syphilis, apparently. Nobody talked about it. Nobody ever knew anybody who had syphilis. Well, he also led me to Wyeth Pharmaceuticals. And Wyeth Pharmaceuticals were the makers of penicillin. And penicillin still is the treatment for syphilis, among other things. But amen, somebody said. I see who it is. In any case, and then we found two kids, incidentally, two kids on staff. They were innocent and young, and we got a picture of them. And then we had a lovely ad in the Sunday paper. And Harry Harris wrote us up. And there we were. Oh, those kids' parents didn't like it at all, but that didn't matter to us. Why? Because we were being paid by Wyeth. We were making money. That's what counted. Forget about syphilis. You'll get better. You know what I mean? All right, there you go. And that's the truth, and that's how it all started. And the important thing was, and this will just take a minute. Well, of course, the glasses have to come out. Wait a minute. I need a better prescription, as a matter of fact. Okay, here we go. This led us to a series of primetime specials, Displaced Homemaker, Caring for the frail elderly, that gave us 2 Emmys, Sexual Harassment on the Job. Do you know, nobody even knew what it meant. We did it. Channel 17, we did it as a total station project. We had promotions, we had public service announcements, we had a resource guide. I'm going to show you something. This is, see, it's a complete guide. It's got plenty in it. This happens to be How to Get on TV, a guide for nonprofits, for programming, for PSAs. And every project we had a guide, so you knew where to go for resources in the community. And the terrible thing is I never saved them. Can you believe it? This is the only one I saved, How to Get on TV, a guide for nonprofits. I must tell you, they didn't give much of a darn at the station. Everything was okay. Oh, they threw in baseball for the better half. Why? Making a buck. I didn't know baseball. I knew nothing about baseball. Of course, that was about the personalities, actually. But the fact of the matter is, I was so in love with the process of doing this, of creating, of following through, and then I had a wonderful assistant, Judy Raplansky. She's not here today, and she was invaluable. But in any case, the station let me alone. Oh yeah, I did a stupid thing. And if there were kids in the audience, I'd say, remember, put it in the back of your head. Never take it for granted that you're not worth something. Doing all the projects and everything, I said I wasn't going to do this when I started. Nobody ever thought, I was too stupid to ask for more money. I didn't need the money, as a matter of fact. That wasn't the point. The point is, you should get paid when you're doing extra stuff that's bringing in revenue. We sold it to Cadillac Dog Food. Yep, we did. And but I had the best time of my life. Well, I think that's about it, except to say that it has been a tremendous love affair. There is not a moment, I think, in 30 years at that station, and 1 year later, they asked me to be a consultant in the affairs. There wasn't a single moment that I didn't walk in the hall, in my office, doing a program, where I wasn't grateful for the excitement, the pleasure, the privilege of being an influence in some fashion to somebody who needed some help, some advice in the glorious job of being a public affairs director. Thank you so much.
Stay. Yeah, I did. For a moment, I thought that the gooseneck was a subject of a show that Dory had done. But thank you, Dory. Dory's an example of how, and I think all of our speakers are today, but I don't know how you can top Dory Lenz. So we really could have each one of our speakers today just have a show themselves and just talk to us of all their experiences. So I would encourage all of us to keep connecting to them, keep talking with them on our own. If you have oral histories that you can record, do those things as well. It's very, very important. But Dory, thank you. It's an honor to be in the same room with you, and I'm sure we all feel that way. Thank you. So this is just a taste of what PHL 17 is. You can see what we talked about, and it's raw, real, it is inventive, it is just a part of everything in the fabric of broadcasting today, not only in Philadelphia, but because Philadelphia, the entire nation. And that leads us to where Philadelphia PHL 17 has been for at least 16 years. For about that length of time, Vince Giannini has been the general manager. He's now senior vice president and general manager. Vince, will you please come up and say some final words on behalf of where you're going, and changes are also coming.
That's right. Thank you, Steve. Hello, everybody. Jerry, thank you for inviting us here today and for putting this on. It's humbling to be up here and follow such legends. Dory, your name is revered in the building to this day. I will walk by and somebody like, that was Dory Lenz's office. I'm like, thank you. So listen, we started off, Jerry let you know, and Len mentioned it. Yesterday we celebrated our 54th birthday as a station. And, so September 17th, 1965, the station signed on the air. Today we're here. Tomorrow, we've been owned by Tribune Media since about 1992. And today is the last day that Tribune Media will own our station. Tomorrow morning, the Nexstar deal will close. We will be part of Nexstar Broadcasting. I'm happy to say that the station will continue to operate independently the way we have. We'll just have some new ownership. But it's, so 9/19/19 is the day that Nexstar will begin. I do have to thank Len for more than just starting the station. Those call letters are magical. And some of you, there was a brief period of maybe almost up to 10 years where the station was just known as WB17. And when the WB network sunset and we were making a transition and I was at the station, they wanted us just to become My 17. And it was the network wanted that, and our station told us what we wanted to do. I looked at them and said, no. I said, I have the best call letters in this city. People would pay a fortune to have them. We're going to use them. And Fox owned My Network TV, and they're like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, you need me more than I need you. I'm like, we're going to do it. We're going to put the PHL back in our logo, PHL 17. And we had a vision when it was My PHL 17 for a few years, that someday the My would drop off, the PHL would move up, it would be PHL 17. We fulfilled that vision a little quicker than we thought we would. And to this day, we're still PHL 17, and that's what we use. And our logo looks a lot like the one that was on the back of the pamphlet that Dory held up. That wasn't an accident. That was intentional. So the station is in a great place. many of you know us. We have a late news that's been produced by ABC in town since 2012. Our Action News does extremely well for us. But a few years ago, we embarked on doing a little bit of news in the morning. It was originally led by Jennifer Lewis Hall. And then we got the opportunity to expand our morning news. And we went to 3 hours last October. We went to 4 hours last week, Monday, on the 9th. And today with me, I have a few of our anchors from the team. I'd like to call up Demetria Green and Nick Foley. Jenna, come on up. I know poor Monica Cryan, our meteorologist, she had to run. She's a new mom. She has a 3-month-old baby at home. So I just want to say we are very honored to be here. Sports is a big part of the station. I'm very proud that we brought the Phillies back in 09. They had their great run in 08, and then we had an unbelievable run with them from 9 through 13. People still think of the station as the home of the Phillies. Now we are the home of the Philadelphia Union. For those of you who play soccer, we carried 30 of their 34 games. So we truly carry a lot of sports. We carried the Philadelphia Wings lacrosse. So we're still trying to do some local sports, but now we're doing a 4-hour local morning show. So I'd like to let Nick and Demetria and Jenna just say hello and welcome them.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for allowing us to be here. It has been a blessing to sit here and just listen to all the legends, just get up here and talk, and just to think that we are sharing that same space and those same walls that you all walk down. So as my boss mentioned, I am Demetria Green. I'm originally from Chicago. I've been in Alabama for the past 10 years, and I finally made it up here to Philadelphia, so I'm so excited. We have a wonderful, wonderful team, and like everyone has said in the past, it really is like a family. So I'm so grateful to be here, and pass it off to my co-anchor.
Yeah, and just to reiterate what Demetria said, my name is Nick Foley. We are incredibly excited to continue the tradition of local broadcast here in Philadelphia. Obviously, listen to these stories; they're amazing. To see to hear the stories of these legends and trendsetters, and to see what has come before, and just how much television has made PHL 17 has meant to this community, and for us to do our part as well. The stories are by no means are taken lightly by any of us. We're very humbled to follow the tradition, as Demetria said as well, and to take words from Steve, to stand on the shoulders of those who have come before. So we do another hour now. We've started, as Vince said, in October. We're very excited about it. We would hope that maybe some of you who we met over the summer at the Broadcast Pioneers when you guys came on the tour at PHL 17, that maybe you guys will give us a look, see what we are doing, give us your take, give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from many of you, and we're just excited to continue things going here.
Hi, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Jenna Meisner. All I know is PHL 17. This is where I got my start as an intern under Vince and Steve Highsmith as well. So I'm so thankful to be in my hometown. I'm a Temple grad now doing what I love here. So it's just amazing, as they also mentioned, to hear the history. Of course, I knew the famous Madonna story, so to hear that from the man himself is incredible. And just thanks so much for all that you have done to pave the way for people like myself to really live their dreams out. So thank you.
Come on back, Steve.
Well, and with that, so ends another episode of This Is Your Life. And so we thank you all for being here and sharing your time with the PHL 17 family, to all of those, again, who came before and who are still with us, and the next gen that's going to keep us going forward. So thank you very much. Have a great afternoon, a great rest of your summer and autumn. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Really